Welcome to the History in Focus channel. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this one. In this peculiar photo, the attempt to recreate Santa Claus resulted in a disquieting figure. With a mask of vacant expression and grotesque details, the costume immediately caused discomfort. Beside him, two children stand, one of them with a cautious look, while the scene challenges any notion of the warm spirit associated with Santa Claus. Two girls pose next to a Santa Claus who looks like he walked out of a nightmare. His worn mask, with hollow eyes and a sinister expression, turns the cheerful figure into a disturbing one. The scene, which should evoke Christmas joy, instead creates an unsettling atmosphere, replacing festive spirit with discomfort that is impossible to ignore. In this photo, the boy's shocked expression says it all. This Santa mask looks straight out of a horror movie. With rigid, empty features, it is anything but inviting. How did anyone think such a thing could bring joy to a child? The static and unsettling figure transforms what should be a magical moment into a disturbing memory of Santa Claus. The masked Santa Claus in this image embodies a Christmas nightmare. His stiff, expressionless mask resembles a hasty, frightening disguise, with eyes seemingly glaring from beneath the mask, making any warm connection impossible. The children, visibly uncomfortable and uninterested, seem eager to escape the strange moment. Instead of magic, the scene exudes a palpable sense of unease. This exaggerated and extended creepy smile, stretching from one corner to the other, could frighten even an adult. The combination of the sinister grin and half-closed eyes gives him a sinister appearance, as if plotting something evil. Far from being the welcoming old man, this Santa Claus brings an uncomfortable feeling that is hard to forget after seeing the image. This Santa Claus seems to have more malicious than kind plans. With a grotesque mask and sinister expressions, he probably spread more fear than joy among the little ones. The hollow look of the mask and the almost rigid hands created a disturbing and macabre atmosphere around this figure. Perhaps this costume would be more successful in a horror house than at a Christmas celebration, scaring even the adults present. Żywaya Mumia, the white-masked Santa Claus, stands out for his strangely uncomfortable appearance. With only thick eyebrows and a fake beard, the vacant mask looks anything but welcoming. The unsettling feeling of such an expressionless face would certainly not be the ideal choice to captivate children, causing more oddness than enchantment. This may be one of the strangest on the list. His mask covers the entire face, including the eyes, leaving only a lifeless void that gives chills. The mask's macabre inexpressiveness, with rigid features, seems to have come from a nightmare or a dark corner of the deep web. Far from bringing Christmas cheer, this figure turns the scene into something deeply unsettling. This girl seems unaware of the danger as she stands next to a Santa Claus who looks more like a nightmare figure. With a sinister gaze and a scruffy beard, he exudes a dark and unsettling aura. The aged, faded tones of the scene amplify the sense of discomfort. This jolly old man is certainly far from being the warm figure of Christmas spirit. In this image, this Santa Claus uses a mask with a deformed face, exaggerated cheeks, and expressionless eyes, which likely caused the child in his lap to cry and feel startled. The frozen expression of the mask, far from conveying Christmas joy, seems to have come from a nightmare. The forced smile of this Santa Claus seems more like a sinister mask than a friendly gesture. With artificially blushed cheeks and frightening makeup, he firmly holds the girl's arms. Her expressionless face suggests she wishes to escape this moment as soon as possible. The bald Santa Claus in the photo defies expectations with a look bordering on bizarre. With exaggerated eyebrows, overly painted cheeks, and brown gloves, he seems more like a sinister parody of the jolly figure. Surprisingly, the baby in his arms appears happy, perhaps unaware of being held by one of the strangest Christmas spirits ever captured. In this image, a gigantic Santa Claus head sculpture served as a playground for a group of children in San Antonio, Texas. Created in 1960, the figure, with disproportionate eyes, cross-eyed, blushed cheeks, and an exaggerated smile, seems both festive and unsettling. In this scene, a girl appears to be swallowed by the enormous mouth of the figure, whose fixed eyes and exaggerated smile give the impression of a sinister creature watching its next victim. Although it was just a playground, Why do you think they no longer make toys like this? This Santa Claus is disturbing in many aspects. The pointed hat, the red face with disproportionate contours, and a smile that seems more sickly than friendly. Something about his hollow stare and exaggerated features causes an undeniable discomfort. Meanwhile, the boy on his lap, oblivious to the photographer's unnerving capture, appears entirely detached from the scene. This Santa Claus in the photo, stepping out of what seems to be an old elevator, with a marked expression and expressionless eyes, carries a series of objects tied around his waist and a gift sack on his back. His appearance, with the pointed hat and rigid demeanor, creates a strange and unsettling atmosphere, more like a horror movie character trying to pass as a neighborhood friend. This Santa Claus displays a strongly somber and introspective air while holding some wrapped gifts. Captured in 1937, he wore a voluminous cloak and a fake beard, and his appearance was more austere than welcoming. The contrast between the Christmas symbolism and the serious expression on his face transformed this record into something more melancholic and enigmatic than festive. In this photograph, Santa Claus takes on a ghostly form, hovering over a sleeping little girl while a woman looks on. Titled A Christmas Dream and created in 1897, the scene combines a creepy atmosphere with a spectral presence, starkly different from the cheerful Santa that would later become popular. Santa Claus of the 1880s was portrayed as a grotesque and unsettling figure. In many images, he appeared with a large, exaggerated mask with disproportionate features, distancing him from the warm figure we know today. His appearance, with stiff and almost caricatured traits, scared rather than delighted, offering a very different vision of Christmas spirit than we have now. Santa Claus is coming to town, but are you ready for his arrival? In front of an apparently quiet house, this peculiar figure appears wearing a sinister mask and an improvised beard, looking more frightening than festive. Without the characteristic joy of the Christmas character, he displays a rigid, almost threatening posture while holding a sack over his shoulder with unidentified contents. In this image, a strange sense of unease sets in. The man in the center appears with an unsettling expression and exaggeratedly large eyes fixed on the camera as if piercing the observer. Holding a child in one arm and a doll in the other, he exudes an aura of disturbance and discomfort. This Santa Claus sits motionless in his chair while wearing a scary mask that easily blends into the peculiar setting of the photo. Surrounding him are children in costumes, accompanied by equally strange figures such as a clown and a smiling nun. This Santa Claus chose an improvised mask made of paper or another cheap material with clumsy hand-drawn designs, probably made with a pen. The result is a figure that sends shivers instead of sympathy, turning the costume into something strangely disturbing. Captured in the early 20th century, the scene shows two children seemingly unaware of the unsettling atmosphere, contrasting with the macabre tone of the central character. With a pale and hauntingly expressionless mask, this Santa Claus brings more discomfort than Christmas spirit. The child crying on his lap seems to share the same sense of strangeness before this unsettling figure. On the other hand, it is hard to imagine what was on the parents' minds when they allowed this encounter, because the result will be a Christmas memory fit for nightmares and trauma. This Santa Claus, with a hood and a custom-made mask, presents a profoundly strange and unsettling appearance. The mask's rigid expression and the static gaze through its eye holes seem to have deeply frightened the little girl, who is crying her heart out in the moment captured by the photo. In this vintage photo, a baby poses happily next to a Santa Claus doll that exudes a disturbing aura. With fixed eyes and an almost malicious expression, the doll seems to stare at the child in a disquieting manner, as its gaze remains locked in the child's direction the entire time. Could this be an evil Santa Claus? This image captures one of the earliest versions of Santa Claus as a peculiar and unsettling figure recorded in the 19th century. With a long, scruffy beard, sturdy boots, a rigid mask, and a cane in hand, he conveys a strange and clumsy aura. His stiff posture in a shadowy environment transformed what should have been a festive figure into something disturbing and enigmatic. In this photograph, a frightening Santa Claus wears a cloak that resembles an ancient tunic. His mask, with hollow eyes and an expressionless face, contrasts sharply with the expected Christmas joy. He holds a branch full of hanging objects, seemingly ornaments. while the children hold simple sacks as gifts. Captured around 1952, this photo shows a failed attempt to convey Christmas spirit. The mask, made of fragile material, began melting, deforming the facial features into a crooked smile and eyes that seemed to drip. The man, unaware of the mishap, inadvertently created a disturbing figure in the photo. Possibly taken in Brazil, this image shows two desperate children crying on the lap of a Santa Claus, whose appearance is far from friendly. With grotesque makeup and an unsettling gaze, the figure seems to intensely frighten the two children with him. The contrast between the typical Christmas setting and the pure terror on the children's faces creates a tone that is disturbing and almost surreal. This early 20th century costume exemplifies how frightening the celebrations of the time could be. With grotesque makeup and facial expressions bordering on the macabre, the Santa Claus in the image looks more like a character from a horror story. The child poses happily while the figure in the background maintains a fixed gaze and an eerie smile. This Santa Claus might seem unwell, or perhaps even no longer alive, but according to the boy in the photo, who described the event as an adult, the jolly old man was so drunk that he could barely stay seated and smelled like he had been drinking since the previous Christmas. These were the Santa Claus masks used in the past, and surprisingly, some still appear today in collections or events. With exaggerated features, a fixed stare, and oddly placed teeth, these masks give off a chilling vibe that borders on the macabre. The contrast between the festive purpose and the terrifying appearance is something that surely left lasting memories for many. This Santa Claus barely shows his face, hidden by half-closed eyes and a mask with rosy cheeks that exaggerate his features in an unwelcoming way. His heavy, static expression left an uncomfortable tone. The grotesque mask only intensifies the strangeness of the scene, making it difficult to associate this figure with the charismatic symbol of Christmas. This Santa Claus displays an oddly uncomfortable appearance, with a flushed face, swollen nose, and sunken eyes accentuated by deep eye bags. His expression gives off a disquieting sensation, as if something is off. The attempt to convey Christmas spirit seems to have failed, resulting in a figure that is more strange than welcoming. With a frightening mask that completely covered his face, featuring an exaggeratedly large nose and nearly closed eyes, this is how the jolly old man appeared in past decades in Australia. This vintage photograph reveals a peculiar version of Santa Claus whose appearance would have been better suited for the horror films of the time than for entertaining children. In this image, a child tries to dress as Santa Claus but uses a grotesque and scary mask, looking more like a nightmare character than the jolly old man. With bizarre traits, this costume makes us question how such masks were considered normal in the past. In this photo, an enigmatic Santa Claus wearing black gloves and a mask with a blank expression poses next to a boy. His long fake beard and lifeless gaze create a disturbing atmosphere, sending chills down the spine of anyone who sees the scene. The composition and contrast add to the discomfort typical of old costumes that deviated from the kind figure we know today. This caricature of Santa Claus is undoubtedly the most terrifying on this list. Dressed in feathers, bird wings, and a pointed hat, he exudes a disturbing aura and a truly haunting appearance. The details of his outfit, which seem to belong to an ancient ritual, reinforce the sense of discomfort, making this one of the creepiest Christmas images ever captured. This bizarre Santa Claus, wearing a strange mask, poses at a show in Central Park, New York in December 1935, alongside two equally disturbing Mickeys that seem to have come straight from the dark corners of the internet. The black and white of the photograph, combined with the dirty and poorly made masks, creates a scenario that conveys a sense of discomfort and strangeness, making the image even creepier and more surreal for Christmas standards. In this intriguing photo, a Santa Claus poses in front of a car bearing a sign that reads, "Hey kids, come get some free candy." Supposedly used to attract children, the scene shocked and outraged the community, leaving this Santa Claus far from being seen in a positive light. In this peculiar scene, a rigid-faced Santa Claus wearing a near-sculptural mask interacts with two children gesturing animatedly toward him. His pale-toned costume with ornamental details, combined with a disproportionately large head, reinforced the figure's unsettling tone. Dated to around 1880, the image depicts a horrifying version of Santa Claus, far removed from the friendly character we know today. In this other scene, an equally disturbing Santa Claus poses with two children in an artificial winter setting. His elongated mask and stern expression, coupled with a worn costume, created an uncomfortable atmosphere for the photo, likely taken in a studio. Dated to the same period, around 1880, this representation underscored how the Santa Claus of that era often appeared more ominous than festive. In a bizarre scene, this Santa Claus appears in the background of the photo, peeking through the window while making a gesture for silence, as if he wants his presence to go unnoticed. Perhaps he was simply planning a surprise for the family, or maybe something else. We will never know. This would just be another common Christmas memory, if not for the sinister gaze of the man dressed as Santa Claus. With his exaggeratedly long beard and austere expression, he embraces a child holding a book, posing for a photo in a somber atmosphere. The seriousness of the child, combined with the solemn air of Santa Claus, transforms what should have been a festive moment into something unsettling and memorable. These two individuals in the photo look like they came straight out of a horror movie, with costumes that bring a macabre and unfriendly atmosphere. Surprisingly, though, they are Christmas costumes dated back to 1911. Santa Claus on the left, wearing a scary mask, and his companion, with a tall hat and frozen expression, create a scene that could easily be mistaken for a haunted house instead of a Christmas celebration. This Santa Claus does not frighten because of his costume, but because of the somber and hostile expression he displays on his face. The boy next to him, with a wary look and a body inclined to move away, seems clearly uncomfortable, but is firmly held by him to pose for the photo, taken in the mid-20th century. In this Christmas photo, an unsettling atmosphere takes over. Captured in 1985, it depicts a figure resembling a mix between Santa Claus and the Pope, overshadowed by the figure on the left. Wearing a puffy outfit and grotesque makeup, the character beside him resembles a haunting figure more than a Christmas helper. In this image, the festive mood gives way to discomfort. Captured in Middlesbrough, 1981, Santa Claus appears with a distant demeanor, but the focus is on the creepy clown dolls in the background. Their symbolic expressions seem more fitting for a nightmare than for entertaining children. This Santa Claus, with a grotesque mask that seems hastily made, is what you do not want to encounter at any Christmas party. His unsettling appearance and the lack of any friendly traits make him a figure worthy of nightmares. When Santa Claus looks like this, the best advice is simple: stay away. This mid-1940s scene depicts a Santa Claus attempting to draw attention to his display window filled with Christmas decorations and toys. However, his appearance causes more unease than charm. With a head disproportionately large for his body and odd artificial features, he seems more like a caricature of the Christmas spirit than a welcoming figure. This photo shows a hairy-footed Santa Claus standing next to a figure that should represent Befana, but looks more like something from a horror movie, Italy, 1996. In Italian tradition, Befana is a kind old woman who delivers gifts to children on Epiphany Eve, but here, her frightening appearance creates a stark contrast to what would be expected for the occasion. The child in the center seems unaware of the unsettling atmosphere that surely caused nervous laughter among the adults. The masked Santa Claus looks more like a figure straight out of a nightmare. This photo, taken between 1969 and 1970, features the girl's great-uncle Louis as Santa Claus, even though the grotesque mask and un-Christmas-like demeanor suggest otherwise. Known for his love of beer, Louis created a strange and unsettling memory. The question remains, what were parents thinking when they considered this a good idea? With a costume that looks more like it came from the deep web, this Santa Claus in a photograph in Poland carries a disturbing look and a frightening mask, combining dark tones, pale skin, and exaggerated details. Perhaps this experience explains the fear of Santa Claus mentioned by many when revisiting such peculiar Christmas memories. In this image, Santa Claus appears with an intensely red face and a bald head, creating a look as peculiar as it is unsettling. The rigid mask, with exaggerated features, and the intrigued look of the little one on his lap make it hard to believe that this figure was considered suitable to bring joy to children at some point. Poland in the 1990s really brought some scary versions of Santa Claus, and this is a prime example. With a disproportionately large nose made of a beet and two thick eyebrows covering his eyes, the costume brought more discomfort than Christmas joy. This image depicts Krampus, a dark figure from European folklore associated with Christmas, invading a room full of children. Represented with horns and a threatening expression, he carries a child, symbolizing his role of punishing the disobedient. Dated to around 1902, this scene showcases the eerie traditions that surrounded the European Christmas season. In the second image, Krampus is shown abducting babies, carrying one in a basket on his back and others on his giant broom flying through the sky. Dated to around 1900, the illustration highlights the figure in action, traversing desolate landscapes of an ancient setting that blends mystery and menace, emphasizing the folklore of the time. In this photograph, Saint Nicholas poses alongside dark Krampus figures during the European winter in the early 20th century. The grotesque Krampus costumes with horns, frightening masks, and branches in hand sharply contrast with Saint Nicholas's clerical robes, rooted in Christian traditions. This Santa Claus seems to have come straight out of a horror movie. With an entirely strange smile and eyes so thin they are almost invisible, his expression conveys an immediate sense of discomfort to anyone observing him. Even the baby in the scene seems to stare at him with surprise and unease, reinforcing the macabre mood of this image. Would you let this scary Santa Claus down your chimney? In 19th century and early 20th century Pennsylvania, this dark figure was a Christmas tradition. Dressed in tattered clothing and wearing a mask blending grotesque and bizarre features, he visited homes distributing candy to the good and cold to the bad. However, with such a grotesque appearance, he certainly sparked more fear than joy. In this image, this Santa Claus poses with several children holding their presents, but something unsettling stands out: the enraged expression visible through the mask. The fixed gaze and tense features leave the impression that something is deeply bothering him. Could it be the long workday or something more sinister? The answer remains a mystery, but the discomfort in the photo is evident. In this image, yet another Christmas mask manages to turn festive spirit into an unsettling moment. The photograph, taken in the first half of the 20th century, captures the mask's expression with wide-open eyes and a forced smile, disconnected from the wearer's demeanor behind it, creating a disturbing contrast. In this photo, this Santa Claus uses a mask that borders on bizarre. One eye is half open while the other is almost shut, and the mouth is misaligned, placed asymmetrically. The pale tone and lifeless expression enhance the feeling of discomfort, making the costume anything but welcoming. This man stands dressed in a simple outfit and makeshift attempt to pass as Santa Claus. His sinister expression and clumsy appearance resulted in an entirely opposite effect, leaving the image with a more uncomfortable atmosphere for children and adults alike than a welcoming one, as if straight out of a macabre horror film. In this photo, a child seems to be begging her parents to be taken out of the lap of this disturbing Santa Claus. With a mask that displays a deformed face, strange eyes, and alarming redness, the figure conveys a sense of unease. The crooked glasses and awkward expression complete the frightening setting, making this photo closer to a nightmare than a Christmas moment. Half of Santa Claus's enduring charm lies in the promise of Christmas presents, and the other half in his cheerful and twinkling demeanor. However, none of these qualities are present in this terrifying mask. With exaggerated cheeks and a fixed, vacant smile, this grotesque version of Santa Claus seems more suitable for a horror movie than a Christmas celebration. In this image, Santa Claus presents a dark and piercing look, almost malevolent. Sitting on his lap, the two little ones seem unaware of the man's disturbing expression, who was supposed to embody Christmas joy. In this image, Santa Claus, with a rigid posture and a completely lifeless expression, resembles a static doll more than a human. Seated on a simple chair, he poses next to a little girl holding a present, but the final result of the scene ends up being more unsettling than festive, leaving an eerie feeling when revisiting this Christmas photograph. At first glance, this Santa Claus seems perfectly suited for the occasion, but his expression gives away something unsettling. His piercing gaze and slightly sinister smile suggest he is planning something malevolent. Despite his impeccable outfit and festive role, it is impossible to ignore the eerie tone his demeanor conveys, making this Christmas photo more sinister and disturbing than cheerful. What makes this scene disturbing is not Santa Claus himself, but the rows upon rows of expressionless dolls occupying the entire background of the image. Perhaps it was just a stockpile of gifts intended for girls, but the meticulous arrangement and lifeless faces of the dolls give off a sinister tone. Was this a simple Christmas preparation or something much more unsettling? In this image, a bizarre-looking Santa Claus visits the home of a woman who appears visibly uncomfortable and nervous about his presence. Captured in 1958, the peculiar costume combined with the darkness inside the house creates a strange and unsettling atmosphere, giving the photo a macabre tone beyond the Christmas spirit. In this photo, the Santa Claus has abandoned any trace of joy, displaying an intense expression of anger that seems threatening. His deeply furrowed brows, almost predatory, convey an undeniable discomfort. Meanwhile, the girl appears unaware of the situation. The Santa Claus masks used in past decades, like this one from the 1950s, were common but carried a disturbing air. With exaggerated features, half-closed eyes, and an expression that mixed apathy with something almost sinister, they created an unsettling atmosphere. Here, the contrast between the child's joy holding a present and the intimidating presence of this masked figure is disconcerting. In this peculiar scene, a mother holds her child, who is accompanied by a Christmas gift. But the disturbing detail is a Santa Claus figure appearing in the background, peeking through the window while gesturing for silence, as if wanting his presence to go unnoticed. Perhaps he was simply planning a surprise for the family, or maybe something else entirely. We will never know. In this photograph, the grotesque Santa Claus costume worn by a member of the Ku Klux Klan draws attention due to its strange appearance, featuring a fake face mask that sends chills down the spine. Beside him, two formerly enslaved individuals sit in silence, while around them, members of the Ku Klux Klan in equally disturbing attire form a tension-filled circle. In this photo, Santa Claus, with a reddened face and deeply disturbing gaze, looks more dead than alive. His worn expression and sinister face cast an unsettling atmosphere over the scene. With a creepy fixed gaze at the camera, he is far from conveying Christmas joy. The somber atmosphere of the scene left an uncomfortable feeling in the environment. By the 1890s, Santa Claus took on an even darker form. Some representations depicted him as a ghostly apparition, shrouded in mystery with almost spectral traits. The figure, with a pale complexion and a frightening demeanor, seemed more like a wandering spirit than the cheerful gift-giver we recognize today. In this photo, it seems like only Santa Claus's body is present, with his spirit having left for another place. His tired and disconnected appearance raises doubts about his suitability for the role. His swollen, almost vacant gaze, paired with an apathetic expression, suggests that he barely tolerates being there. In this image, although Santa Claus's costume is impeccable, his gaze directed at the camera conveys a suspicious air that diverges from the Christmas spirit. Sitting on a wooden chair, with children seemingly oblivious to the man's unsettling expression, the scene leaves an uncomfortable and eerie atmosphere.